All right. So today we have Kansas governor candidate, Stacy Rogers.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I like to start off with some basic stuff. So you're a mother,
Mhm.
entrepreneur,
Yep.
and now a Kansas governor candidate.
Yes.
So
That's
I'm a little ignorant on this. Like, you've obviously declared, right?
Mhm.
So have you declared with like the state? Do you have to do that too?
So the process is in order to be able to campaign and fundraise, you
Okay.
have to name a treasurer. So you have to file a treasurer with the state of Kansas with the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And that is the only requirement to begin campaigning.
Okay.
Now, at some point, once I have chosen a lieutenant governor, then I will file
Okay.
and pay my filing fee with the state. But because of the way that Kansas runs, those two positions run together
Okay.
instead of like in Missouri, they run their own separate campaigns. So they file separately.
Separately.
So it's
Okay.
kind of like Kansas is set up like the federal government. So president and vice president. So
Okay.
your running mate. Yeah.
So you have to have
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And so you can't file until you have that running mate chosen.
And,
So yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And most people won't choose that until sometime next year.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. We'll get into that a little bit later, like when the primaries are
Yep.
coming up and
Yep.
everything
Yeah.
like that. Okay. I do it every episode, born and raised. Just go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Wichita
Okay.
and I was raised in Newton and I graduated from Newton High School. So I've always lived in the South Central Kansas area. And my family goes back multiple generations from all over the state.
Okay.
So I have family that came from Coffeyville, from Cuba, Kansas. You ever heard of
I
Cuba?
have
Yeah.
not.
Cuba, Kansas. That's a lot of Czechoslovakian heritage there.
Okay.
And Belleville, Concordia. I had family out in Goodland, all over the state. So just I'm very familiar with lots of different areas of the state and have family from all of those. So it's kind of fun.
Okay.
But yeah.
So pretty much spent your time growing up
Yep.
in Kansas.
Yep.
All right. So,
Yeah.
well, that's good
Yeah.
for somebody
like
that's
Kansas.
running for
That's
governor.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So school is like
Yeah.
what any certain like elementary? Did you move around through
No.
elementary and high
Well,
school?
in elementary school is when we moved from Wichita to
Newton.
Newton. So
Okay.
I was a kindergartner. So really the majority of my school was in Newton.
Newton.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I went through all the way through graduation. So graduated from Newton High School.
Okay.
And yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So then after graduation, when did you get into being an entrepreneur? So
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. I don't know that I ever thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. It wasn't something that I was actively searching for. I was a mom. I was a
Okay.
stay-at-home mom for a number of years. And actually, while I was a stay-at-home mom, I started my first business.
Okay.
And it was, this is going to date myself a little bit, but it was when Amazon still only sold books.
Okay.
And so I started a book business on Amazon and I sold books. I still do it today, actually. I've been doing it for more than 23 years.
Wow. Okay.
That I've been a bookseller on Amazon. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's back when they did just books
Just
and
books.
did they?
Yeah.
I think CDs too a little
Maybe,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Music.
Media. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
that's-
And so that was my first experience with that. And I kind of liked it. I liked
Yeah.
the ability to stay home. I had to stay home because of a difficult pregnancy and had come home from a job. And then, I was like, man, what am I going to do? I don't really want to go back to work. I'm kind of enjoying
Yeah.
being a stay-at-home mom. And when this was kind of brought to me, I kind of figured it out. I ran with it and I did that for a number of years and held a number of at-home positions for quite a few years and then
Okay.
branched out into other things. So
Okay.
yeah.
Which has led to
Yeah.
some other businesses
Yes.
that you're involved in.
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Still?
So
Okay.
In 2015, I became a Mary Kay consultant,
Okay.
and I've become a highly decorated Mary Kay sales director. And I was a sales director until October of last year when I stepped down
Okay.
and from leadership. So I'm still a consultant. I still have customers all over the United States, and a lot, mostly concentrated in Kansas. But I have about 450, 500 customers in
Wow.
the state of Kansas that
Okay.
I maintain still, and then I still have I think about 100 consultants under
Okay.
me. Even though I stepped back from leadership, I'm not responsible for their training anymore, but there's still consultants that are under me. I had about 140 at one point. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I did that. I've been with them for 10 years, and that led to other businesses.
Okay.
So I ended up purchasing in 2021. I purchased kids closet consignment sales here in the Wichita area, and I purchased two more in Missouri, so in Blue Springs and Lee Summit, Missouri. And those are pop-up consignment sales that serve the community, and we happen to have the largest one in the state, in the whole chain. At that time,
Okay.
we held it in about 30,000 square feet, and it was huge. And so I bought that in 2021, and um, did that for, a few years. And we've actively moved that sale to like downsize that sale on purpose because 30,000 square feet got to be a little overwhelming for the moms with babies trying
Oh,
to shop.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was just a lot for a person to walk in and take in. And there was just a lot of product. We were running well over 100,000 pieces of product
Hmm.
per sale. And it just got to the point where I was like, I think we could offer a better experience if we downsized a little bit. And so we went to 3 sales a year instead of 2, and then actively worked on how do we condense and make this sale better.
Okay.
And so I did that. But I then in 2022, January of 22, I purchased Eberly Farm, which is the second longest
Ah.
running event
Okay.
venue in most of the state.
Okay.
It's the second longest running for sure in Sedgwick County.
Hmm.
The Cotillion is the only one that's ran longer
Okay.
by 2 years. And
Hmm.
so we were very close. But if you look at how event centers come in and go out, it's not hard when you have something that's been running since the 60s
Yes.
to be the longest running in the state. And I haven't verified that 100% that but more than likely we're very close to the second longest running in the entire state, if
Right.
not that. So I took that over in 2022. I was the first person outside of the Eberly family to own it since the 1800s.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was interesting, and I've done that for the last 3.5 years. And I'd never ran an event or done a wedding prior, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a very interesting experience, and um, you know, business wise, it's not a difficult job.
Hmm.
It's the same thing kind of over and over, just meeting other people's needs for what they want in
Right.
their event. So, but it's been a lot of fun. And then in 2024,
Okay.
I bought the entire Kids Closet company nationwide.
Whoa.
So I'm the nationwide franchisor for Kids Closet, and I have about 26 franchises across the United States. So,
Wow.
and next week, in fact, a lot of my owners will be coming in. I don't know when this is airing, but we'll just say they're coming in, and we're going to have a retreat
Okay.
for those owners. So across the United States. So I'm very excited to do that for them.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you get to go check in on
yeah.
travel and check in on them or
Yeah,
like that.
last year I actually did. I traveled in 15 days.
Okay.
No, sorry, 10 days. I hit 15 of my franchises
Wow.
and met with those owners because I'd only bought it at the beginning of 24. So I hadn't actually met some of these people in person, and I'd never really seen where their sales were located. And so I went through, we have one in Iowa, in Des Moines. We have one in Illinois. We have one in Michigan. We have, and then we get over into the Eastern United States, and I have a whole bunch of them in like Pennsylvania, Maryland,
Oh,
Virginia, And there's just a bunch. There's a big concentration of them there, and so we got to all of those, and then had to come back, and we have other ones. We have one in Alaska. We have some in
Oh,
Texas. We have some in South Carolina, and so they're kind of all over. But yeah, and we're growing. We have several more that are coming on this year, and honestly, that's thanks to Trump's tariffs.
okay.
Um, the resale business has exploded because people see the need to be able to sell things without taxing them again and again for for the tariffs and stuff. So or raising the prices because of the tariffs. So
Right,
it
yeah.
opened up a really good avenue of income for people to start a business.
Great.
So yeah,
Creating a
yeah.
few more jobs too.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah, and that's just it. And this serves the community
Mhm.
because take for instance our Wichita sale, our consigners are the ones selling. So these are local people in the city or in the county that are selling items they don't need any longer.
Okay.
And then we have shoppers come in, so families that need a great deal on something. So they come in and they're buying items at, 50 to 90% off retail.
Okay.
And they're gently used for the most part. We do have some new items, but and they are, getting a great deal on items that they need for their entire family. And we're a family sale, so we can outfit the entire family, including the parents. And we take clothing. We have clothing all the way up to adult 3X. We do have maternity. We have junior sizes, and we also carry things like scrubs,
Oh, okay.
dance costumes. All sorts of different things. So,
Okay.
so we really do serve the entire family. And then on top of that, we have toys, games, puzzles, books,
Oh, okay.
sporting goods. We
Okay.
now have housewares and home decor and small appliances, and just so really serving that entire family's needs. And then at the end of the sale, if the consignor does not want to pick their items up, then they're donated. And this year, we're really excited because we're working with DECA
Mhm.
and directly with those families who are in need. We're working with foster families. We've always worked with foster families. And then the public in general can come in and get items that they need as well. And so I never wanted to make people jump through hoops to get items that they need for their kids. If you need a pair of shoes for your kid, I want to be able to put a pair of shoes on your kid. So,
Yeah. Okay.
so we do that. And then the facility that we rent now is one of the Salvation Army facilities. And so the money that we pay the Salvation Army goes directly back into the community
Right.
to serve their programs. So we're very much community based. I'm a huge shop local, support your local stores and businesses. That's very, very important. So
I think
yeah.
we need there's like a small business day,
Hmm.
during the year,
Yeah.
like a national small business day. Seems like we should have one
Yeah.
once a month.
Yeah. 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 Small
You know,
businesses are important.
they
So
are very
yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Keeps things more directly tied to the community.
Hmm.
Also, a sense of investment in the community.
Yes.
I
Well,
mean,
they're
it's
the
just good.
backbone. They're the backbone
Yeah.
of our community, and when you're thinking about, maybe out in western Kansas where there's less population, sometimes those businesses are what is keeping that town
Hmm.
there,
Yes.
and so when those businesses start to leave, so do the people.
Hmm.
And so it's very important to support those businesses to keep those cities, those towns running. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they've been cutting the wheat here
Oh,
lately, and then all that stuff. So
yeah.
okay. Now, so we've led up to 2024 where you got to.
Mhm.
So I guess the big question is why?
Why did I decide to run? So, it was really interesting because, one of the things I'll tell you about my business is when I was working with Mary Kay and became a sales director, and then I decided to buy another business, like, people just lost their minds. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you can't do that. You're gonna fail. You just can't do 2 things at once." And I said,
Hmm.
"Oh, I think it'll be okay." And it was fine. And then, like I said, the next year, I buy Eberly Farm and everybody loses their mind again. They're like, "You're clearly going to fail today. Like, there's no way you're going to keep going." And I said, "Well, I think it'll be fine." And it's been fine. 3.5 years later, we're fine. And when I then the next year decided and told everybody that I purchased the entire company of Kids Closet, all I got was, yeah, that's great. Good job. And then, but it was later that year
Mhm.
that I decided to run for governor, that I should say, that I made my decision
Last year?
known.
Yeah.
Well, that I already knew that I was going to, but I had not made it public.
Okay.
Okay. So, in January of 24, I bought a company, and in September of 24, had filed my treasurer, and I announced in November, the day after the election.
Okay.
And so when that occurred, everybody just went naturally. That was the progression, So why I say that is that's a testament of about, 5 years of work where people went from saying, you can't possibly do this,
Mhm.
to, of course you can.
Yeah.
This makes total sense. So when I decided to run, what occurred was it was actually in September of 23, and I was standing in my living room, and I had never once had the thought process that I was going to run for governor ever in my life.
Mhm.
But it was the day that Laura Kelly decided that you could change your driver's license, change the sex on your driver's license.
Okay.
So if you wanted to be a male, you could be a female now on your driver's license. And I was just, I don't know how many times a day you look at your driver's license or you show it to somebody else. It is not a life altering, it's just not something that really affects your day-to-day survival in this state. Okay.
Mhm.
And she took taxpayer time and money
Mhm.
and devoted it to that.
Okay.
And, I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and I said, I can't take any more of this. This is ridiculous. There's so many other things that she could have been paying attention to
Mhm.
that would actually make a difference in our lives,
Right.
on a day-to-day basis. And I said, I'm just going to have to go be governor. And
Okay.
that was the moment that I said it. It was September 23. And I'd never had that thought process before, but when I said it out loud, it was imprinted on my heart and it has not left. And so I started having conversations, and, I have lots of reasons for running, but what I realized very quickly, and why there's no way that I'm going to get out of this race prior to the primary, which that does happen. Like, candidates will enter and they'll back out. That's not going to happen with me.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that more people I talk to, I realize that people do not feel like they have a voice anymore.
Mhm.
They don't feel like they're appreciated, listened to. They don't feel like anybody's really working for them anymore. They don't feel like that they matter, that their
Mhm.
voice matters. And we have a huge apathy problem growing, not only in the state, but across the United States. And what that means is when somebody doesn't see somebody that represents them, they don't believe that anybody is really listening to them anymore. They're left with a couple of choices when they go to vote. They can vote just R down the whole way or D down the whole way, whatever it is, write in somebody, I don't know, whatever they want to do, they can do that. And a lot of people choose that. I don't see anybody, but I'm going to vote R down the whole way because it's the lesser of the two evils, or
Uh-huh.
D the whole way because it's the lesser of the two evils in their eyes. And so a lot of people do that, but a growing number of people say, I'm sorry, I don't see anybody that represents me, and I can't support anybody that's on this ticket, so I'm just not going to vote at all.
There's a lot of that.
A lot of that.
Yes.
And that is a terrible place to be, because
Mhm.
once you disengage from that voting process, you tend to also disengage from the community as a whole.
Right.
And so when we have that, it does a couple things. We have people disengaging. Nobody's participating. No one is working to make the changes that need to be changed, except for a very, very small percentage of people that are making all of the decisions for all of us.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, they're not making great ones.
Mhm.
Okay. And so as I'm traveling and I'm talking with people, I talk to them a lot about, hey, what are you doing in your community
Uh-huh.
How are you serving? Because that's where it really matters in your day-to-day life, what you are doing inside of your town or your city or your county. The state level's great. National, they're going to do what they're going to do. What are you doing that's affecting your day-to-day life? And that could be as simple as going next door and talking to your neighbor and saying, what do you think about this issue? And what do you think we should do about it? Or what can we do about it? And as I've traveled, it's been really fun because there's been about 5 people that have come back to me and said, I'm running for office because you came and talked to my group and encouraged me to be involved. And, if I do nothing more than get more people involved in their community, it's a win. I've
Right.
done a good day's work and I'm okay with that. I don't know what the future holds and I don't know the exact, I know the path that I'm on, but I don't know exactly where it's going to land me. But I do know that I will sleep well for the rest of my life, knowing that I've worked as hard as I possibly can to reach as many people as I can and to engage them and to excite them and motivate them to be involved again.
And make
So,
some
that's
changes at
right.
the smaller,
That's right.
really local level. Okay.
Well, and I tell people a lot that to make real changes in this state, you'll hear things all the time. Oh, our career politicians, our legislators aren't working for us, all this. Okay, well, what it's going to take is a active population, okay, of citizens, a good, strong governor to then work together to drain that swamp and clean out and get good servant leadership in those positions. And we do have some. I'm not knocking everybody in our legislature. We have some great people serving right now, but we also have some bad ones. And there are people that have been there too long. I'm a total supporter of term limits.
Yes.
And there's just people that have been there too long and they need to exit and let other good servant leadership come into office and serve. That's how our government was set up, was to for the farmer to come in out of his field, serve his time, and then go back to his fields and back to his business. And we need to get back to that. It was never meant to be a career position.
It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah.
I know. So when you said the reason you said you had enough and why you wanted to run, that's kind of coming out with guns blazing right there, that answer.
Yeah.
I know it's controversial, but on the flip side, there's people that are going to say maybe somebody's running because they're tired of maybe seeing like how, Trump does something or something like that. And they want to make a change on the state level because they don't like something. So what I'm getting at is dialogue is important. Very important. And you've been my little research that I've been doing because you popped up and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to take a look into your campaign. Looks like you've been traveling around quite a bit in the state.
I've put 29,000 miles on my car since December.
In Kansas.
Yeah, in Kansas. That's right.
Okay, so you've been all over then, talking to people, like you said, getting people excited about their community and what to do, or get involved in their local, I guess, just their local government process. But you've created dialogue.
Yep. Yeah. And there's some very active groups. Like we have some great counties that are really, really working hard. And then we have other counties that just aren't. I don't know what they're doing. And we need to help people realize that they can be the change that needs to occur. Don't leave it to a small group of people, regardless that we have elections and we put people into different positions to make those decisions for us. We still need to be, as citizens, active in that process. If go to a council meeting and see what they're doing, what decisions they're making on your behalf in that council meeting, because if they don't hear your feedback, if they don't know if you agree or disagree with something, they're just people.
You're
They're
right.
just people, and they're gonna
Uh-huh.
make the best decision that they think. We hope. I mean, that's why we elected them.
Uh-huh.
They're gonna make the best decision that they can make based on the information they've been given.
Correct. Yeah.
And if they're not receiving any feedback from the citizens, whether they like it or not, they won't know that. And they can't, they'll be guessing. And, I used to serve on a city council, and one of the things that, we won't get too deep into this because it's a city issue, but there's a battery storage facility that they're trying to put in Halstead.
Okay.
And I was asked to come in on that and give them some advice and help them a little bit. And I did. And one of the things at their last council meeting, there was, Halstead's about 2,200 people total. And there was about 100 people in the city council meeting. Probably, I mean, they had to bring in extra chairs. Normally people don't even show up for these things. This was clearly an issue that they were concerned about as citizens, and good job for them showing up. And one of the council members had taken 300 phone calls from people in the community the week prior. And 90% of them, 95% of them were, no, we don't want this
Yeah.
in our city.
Okay.
And the 100 people that were there were, no, we do not want this in our city. And they all got up and gave their reasons. It affects the aquifer. It affects, and that doesn't just affect Halstead. That those water that goes out to several counties. That affects a lot further than just under Halstead. And what would happen if God forbid there was an accident with that facility, how it would poison the farmland around it, how it would, the entire Harvey County would be an evacuation zone. There's just so many things that people were bringing up that were devastating consequences, and they hadn't been given any environmental facts about what this would do. So anyways, we at the end, I wasn't going to speak at all. And at the end, I got up and I looked at the council and the mayor, and I said, as a council person, if I would have received this much pushback on anything, we would have backed off of whatever that was and talked with the people of the city to find out why and listen to them, because our job is to serve the people of that city.
Yes.
Okay. To work for them. And I said, if you were to pass this and God forbid something happened, Halstead would no longer exist, because it would be sued into oblivion by not only the people of this town, but all the farmers surrounding, all the municipalities surrounding that you just ruined their water, anybody, all the, and I said, and they wouldn't even just come after the city. They'd come after you personally for making that decision. And you need to really think about the fact that you have so many in this room opposed to this before you make that decision. And the council voted it down, and the mayor vetoed it.
Oh.
And so now they're doing something else, but they're still working through it. And I don't want to show their hand, but I know what they're doing. So I believe the people will, because they are engaged, because they are active, because they are voicing what they're not okay with having in their backyard. And and I don't know if you know anything about these facilities, but it would have provided a constant buzz. This is going near people's houses.
Okay.
And it would have been a constant, hum loudly.
Okay. Yeah.
In a very small town, and it would have affected everybody in the town. And that's just one thing that would have been not okay.
Right.
And there wasn't any jobs, there wasn't any real benefit to this facility. And so it was a lot of stuff that they were trying to unpack why they were pushing it so hard. And so that's still, being worked through, but that's an example of the citizens and your right to, make your voice be heard, and that it matters, and that there are still avenues that, even if they don't want to listen to you, there are avenues to pursue to still take the needs of the city and move those away from a mayor and a city council that are trying to do something that the citizens don't want. And
Yeah.
so there are processes. Just a lot of people don't realize that, and they feel helpless and they feel hopeless, and they don't know what to do. But there are things available to us by state statute, by the way. So
Okay. Is
yeah.
that something like, so is that a company wanting to bring in a facility there to,
Mhm.
so would the city the city government
Yeah.
be making money off of that facility, or would they be
So
paying them
yeah,
like a lease?
they would have been paying them, but
So there's the,
it is the financial thing, but it wasn't. There were other ways to do some things,
okay.
so it wasn't as
Uh-huh.
beneficial as they were trying to make it sound. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Because they try to sell you jobs,
there's no jobs,
oh,
and
there's
they
no
said no
jobs.
jobs, zero
Just,
jobs. Yeah, it's a battery storage facility, no jobs.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't see the benefit at all then.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
just more detriment than benefit. So
Okay.
yeah, but that's just an example. That's one example.
Right.
There's plenty of other examples of things happening throughout counties where we have good citizens standing up for what's right and speaking against things that they don't want in their community that are harmful. And you have to be able to do that. You have to realize that you have a voice and to stand up and use it,
Right.
regardless of who. Sometimes, sometimes we elect the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't necessarily know that because one of the things, so I talk about term limits, but I also think that there should be total limit on the amount you can spend on a campaign.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And that would cut out
100%.
big
Yes.
money donors. That would
Uh-huh.
cut out, what it would do is not allow the candidate to hide behind political ads
Mm-hmm.
and political mailers and force them to get in front of their constituents and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And you would find out very, very quickly who you agreed with and who you didn't
Mm-hmm.
when you do that.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be able to avoid the uncomfortable questions. They would have to answer them. And that's actually how I do all of my meetings. I don't stand up and give speeches. I don't actually like it. I think it sounds canned and I sound like a politician, which I'm not. And so instead, I get up and I say, well, what's your pain point?
Uh-huh.
What is it that you want to know about me,
Yeah.
how I feel about a certain topic
Uh-huh.
and what I'm going to do about it. And I would much rather answer questions than just stand up there and maybe talk about something you're interested in, maybe not.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of politicians are afraid to do that because they don't want to get asked the gotcha questions or the hard questions or be made uncomfortable in any way. And I think that if you're unable to do that, now, have I been asked uncomfortable questions? Yep. I
Yeah.
sure have.
You're going to.
And sometimes I'm asked questions that I don't know the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say is I'm not going to know the answer to everything. And if I stand up here and blow smoke and try and make you think I know the answer, I'm being dishonest, disingenuous. I'm not being fair to you at all. But what I do know, I can't possibly know all the answers. But I do know that I'm wise enough to surround myself with the people that do know those answers and can help me and that can help me make the appropriate decisions. There's vast, deep topics
Mm-hmm.
that I've only scratched the surface of in understanding. I know enough to be dangerous, I tell people, but I got to call my experts in
Mm-hmm.
and say, tell me more about this and what do we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
I can't shove it all in my brain and
Okay.
retain it all. So.
Yeah.
And anybody that says they can, they're lying to you. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know that, saying that is a big thing
Mm-hmm.
because, when somebody's starting to go off into left field, like I would rather hear I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know. What is your thought?
Right.
What are you
Well,
thinking?
yeah, that's exactly it. I've asked that before. I'm like, I'm not familiar with that. Would you expand on that for me?
Correct. Yeah.
And tell me more about it. Educate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a business owner and I'm for, making it easier to do business in Kansas, but my businesses are only one type of business, and it's not a actually heavily regulated part of business.
Mhm.
I think the most regulated I am is that I have a liquor license for my venue,
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
pretty regulated. There's some rules. But in general, there's a lot of other businesses that are far more regulated that I don't know all the ins and outs of those businesses of why that is harming them or helping them or whatever. So, for example, somebody came to me not too long ago and they said, I'm in the business of trucking fuel.
Mhm.
And he said, I can't hire enough people to drive the trucks. He says, I have people willing. I have all these people over here that want the job. I can't hire them because the federal government, so not even at the state level, the federal government has said in order to get your CDL, you are now required to take this $12,000 class.
Wow.
Right. And then you go take the test. Whereas before, you might be able to bring an employee in and they could apprentice, they could learn on the job and be under the wings of that employer and then go take the test. And they're not allowing that anymore. And so, we kind of talked through some different ideas of how we could, you know, because that shouldn't all go on the employer. Like the employer can't foot 12 grand for each employee he wants to bring on. And I guarantee you, I have a 22-year-old son that is a diesel mechanic. He would love to hire my son. My son doesn't have 12 grand to go take a test.
Mhm.
It's just not happening. He's a 22-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And so, they've really put these both employers and potential employees in a tough spot to be able to do business. And earlier this year, you saw Laura Kelly extend the amount of time that truckers could be on the road.
Uh-huh.
And I think she extended it to, it was like either 10 or 12 hours from the 8 hours that is currently normally allowed. And so she made it more dangerous
Uh-huh.
for people on the road because now you're allowing truckers to drive even longer without rest. And it's because there's a shortage in drivers.
Yes.
So why not fix the problem? What can we do as a state to get more drivers? How do we get them to that class where they can get the class, get the job, and get on the road where we don't have that shortage anymore? And that's something that I'm actively working on. So,
Is that
yeah.
something we could create like basically I guess would it I don't know if I'd fall under VOTAC or anything like that
Yeah,
but like
there is. I mean,
maybe
it is, but I think it would have to be something that either there was, and I'm so not for saddling people with debt. That's just not.
and no.
I have a lot of problems with the colleges and the amount of debt they're saddling, decades of debt they're saddling our kids with. But I think that there could be some sort of a program put in place because we're not going to change the federal rule,
Mhm.
but there could be a program put in place maybe that they're able to get in with that employer, and that employer is the one that's kind of monitoring their training.
Mhm.
Um, they're able to take that class, and then they're able to pay back that class through that employer. So they're gainfully employed, they're taking the test, they're not paying it up front, but they're paying it back through that program.
Okay.
And as long as they stay with that employer and they stay gainfully employed in that area, then they're not really going to notice that small amount. And at some point, maybe some of that is forgivable. And that's again we're in the baby stages of that of trying to figure out what would be the best
Yeah, that would be a good
way.
idea.
But if you have something taken out of your check, before you
Mhm.
ever receive your check, you're probably not going to notice it as much.
Right.
And so it is an option
Mhm.
that we could explore. I kind of like the idea of if they stay with the same employer, because that's always important as well, employee
It is.
retention,
Yeah.
that maybe part of that becomes forgivable at some point.
Hmm.
And that would be something that we'd have to look at a state level. Can we supply this? But I think that's a value added thing. We're adding value to the state by, we would attract more drivers to companies that would live here in this state.
Hmm.
We would, and this could span over a lot of different areas, not just trucking, but what other areas do we have, um, you know, testing that needs to occur and classes that need to be taken that aren't necessarily covered through VOTEC or something like
Okay.
that, like you were talking about. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So that's okay.
yeah,
Yeah. See, you're getting yourself into a lot. Like I'm already like, this, we're at two issues right now, and I'm
yeah.
like, but okay. So I guess when you were saying that you're going on the road talking to
Hmm.
people, and yeah, you get the hard questions or the uncomfortable questions. Um, do you feel like you've got a good response from
Hmm.
people that are not,
Well,
the
sometimes,
old saying of from the other side of the
yeah,
aisle, let's
yeah.
say that. And
I don't know that I've run into a lot of that. I mean, um, we are, regardless of what people think, we are still very much a conservative state.
mhm,
And so when I'm out there talking with people, I'm not running into massive amounts of people that are, nobody's screaming at me, nobody's doing anything. Everybody's very respectful and
okay,
and nice. And really that's what it comes down to. Can we have a conversation even if we don't agree? So there's 2.9 million people in this state. For every single person in this state to even agree on one thing,
mm-hmm.
that would be a miracle.
It would be.
It just
Hmm.
isn't going to happen. So we're not going to agree on everything. But I bet we can find
Common ground,
something that
or
we can
yeah,
agree on with every person. We may not agree on social issues or I think we can all agree that we want lower taxes, great education, safe neighborhoods, and to be able to afford gas and the food that's in the store.
uh
It's not always the methods is what we tend to get hung up on. How do we get to that? And that's part of why I believe that our voices are important, because there are people out there with some great ideas
uh
that never get to say them.
uh, yeah, or they don't get done to their fullest.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
I see a big problem with that in Wichita. Like they'll have these big ideas that'll be so great, and then it doesn't happen, or it
Yeah.
doesn't happen to its fullest, or they
Yeah.
go real half on it,
Mhm.
and yeah, there's times we have so much more potential here.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Why do
o-
you think that is? I'm gonna podcast you.
okay,
Podcast. Why do you think that they don't get to take those to their fullest? What do you think's the barrier?
okay. So back when I did go to some city council meetings in Wichita back when
Mhm.
I was younger. I did the BMX thing and went and sat in on the meetings about the skate park that got put in
Okay.
downtown. And I had been to skate parks all over the country,
Mhm.
public parks,
Mhm.
Louisville, however you want to say it.
Mhm.
um, they have this big, massive, nice skate park. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, it's huge. And it drives a lot of people there from
Mhm.
all over the country. Like people, it got out in BMX videos, skate videos, everything like that. And people wanted to go to this thing. So it's bringing in a lot of people to that
Right.
community.
Right.
So you're bringing outside money into
Mhm.
mom and pop burger joints that are right there next to
Right.
it. Anything.
Mhm.
This one, they had a pretty good budget for it that could have been really good.
Yeah.
From a lot of the parks I had been around to, just knowing some of the back inner workings of how all that went, and they flopped it. They messed it all up on subcontracting a part of it locally, which is good. I get that. But in the long run, it wasn't good.
Right.
Some things a professional that does that needs to
Sure.
do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
So they
get,
were looking for the less expensive option,
yes,
less expensive
and
local option. Yeah.
and then the
Yeah.
design fell apart, and then because you can clearly tell the side that was done by the people that do this for a living all over the country, and the side that was not. And so that's why I'm saying it had a lot more potential.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
cut some corners, and and I got it. You want to keep some money and jobs in town,
Sure.
but you also sometimes, I think, you have to think long term.
Right. Right.
That
About what it's going to bring to the community.
right.
Yeah.
Because it has a cool location under a bridge, so you
Yeah.
can ride it when it's raining most of the time.
Yeah.
Things like that. Where's this aquarium that they keep talking? Oh, I think the zoo got it, didn't they? Or
Something. Yeah.
something like that. I don't know. But they were, Century 2 has been a big talk.
Yeah.
I get it. People love it on the skyline or whatever over there, but I think its time is done.
It's not a
It's a
very
money pit.
Yeah, it's not a very functional space anymore.
No.
It's not, there's not great parking around it. It's not necessarily easy to access. I know I do several events a year there, and I'm never real happy when I'm there.
No. Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of people that want to save Century 2, and I understand that as well, but I agree that is a place that, while iconic to Wichita, something else needs to be figured out with it.
I think so.
Whether it is, and I know it's a major upgrade, a major expense for an upgrade. But if they truly don't want to get rid of it, then they need to make those changes. They need to take those steps. So,
Well, like right now I'd have to look at the calendar to see if anything's going on there, but I'm sure the air conditioner's running in it right now and everything like that. And who knows, there might not be anything for 3 weeks in that thing until it's something small. And so why not put that giant area? Okay, the ballpark they did do a good job on. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah.
It's nice. I haven't been there yet, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of people seem to enjoy it. So so they did do that cool. I'll give them that credit. But that's a big area right there by the river on the downtown side. I think could be used for something to bring in out-of-state revenue. Bring money from other. Oklahoma's doing it. They've been growing like crazy with bringing people from out of state.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that only being 2 hours away from us, Oklahoma City.
Right.
2.5, 2 hours, something like that. But
yeah.
I don't know. The people here, every time you hear somebody come through, and like I know a coach, the basketball tournament, I don't know if you know what that is. Like it'll have the aftershocks, Wichita State alumni team.
Okay.
It's on Fox.
Sure.
So I know a coach from out of state comes here. They won't be here this year, but he's like, I love it here. Everything's so much more relaxed. The people are so nice.
Yeah.
So
it's a great place.
Yeah.
The whole state's a great place.
It is.
So,
yeah. So I just feel like more things or things need to be looked at more.
Yeah.
To maybe develop here or.
Well, and again, if you don't have an active community giving that input all the time, and I say that because and I know Mayor Lily Wu will say, look, here's when the meetings are, and we're even doing evening meetings now, so you can come, and the turnout is still very, very low. for a community, an area that is over 500,000 people, to have, I went to an event a while back thinking, man, I better get there early. It's going to be packed. It's going to have so much. And I mean, it was maybe 75,
For
maybe 100
Wichita.
people for a Wichita
Hmm.
event, a town hall event. Yeah. And I just thought, that is the level of apathy we are dealing with. And if and I've been to Sedgwick County Commission meetings, and the same thing, there might be 30 people in the room, which is actually a pretty good turnout if I'm being really honest. So many council meetings and um, county meetings, sometimes there's just a couple people, and
Hmm.
that's it that show up, outside of the people that are normally, there for whatever.
In a smaller
uh,
county meeting, or
I mean, even in ours, even in Wichita.
okay,
So
yeah.
yeah, they're just, and so we just, as I've been traveling, I was up in Beloit a while back, and I always ask how many people in the room are precinct people. Do you know what a precinct person is?
So at the city level,
No, no,
state level.
no. So inside of the Republican Party, and I'm assuming it's in the Democratic Party as well, we have precinct people. They are
Yes,
actually the lowest elected
it's
official.
it's like your immediate community, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it's the people in your neighborhood, and
Hmm.
there you have a committee man and a committee woman, precinct woman and a precinct man, and their job is to knock on your door and tell you about local, city, county, state, and federal things that are going on. That's their job.
Hmm.
And in Sedgwick County alone, we have over 200 vacant spots.
Just nobody wants to do it,
Well,
or
we're talking about apathy here, so
yeah.
I don't know. And then, but I have a precinct woman, and she's never knocked on my door.
Hmm.
I didn't even know that there was such a thing until I started getting involved. And so when I go out places and I do these meetings, I say, how many people in here are precinct people? And I'll get a few hands in the room, and I'll say, well, how many open seats do you have? And when I was in Beloit, they were like, oh my gosh, we have so many open seats, but it's a population issue. I said, no, it's not.
Hmm.
It's not a population issue. I said, in 500,000 people in Sedgwick County, we have 200 open seats.
Hmm.
We can't fill 200
Yeah,
open seats out of 500,000 people. It's not a population issue. It's an apathy issue.
it is.
And so getting people involved in the community is incredibly important.
Hmm.
I cannot stress that enough, that people need to get involved. So even if you don't think there's a hot button issue or a huge topic, being at those meetings every week and seeing what's going on and they're also televised. You guys, they're televised too. You can watch them, whether it's the Sedgwick County Commission or the Wichita City Council. They're all televised. In fact, some of the smaller communities are televised as well. Halstead is televised. They put it on YouTube,
There you
and you
go.
can watch it. So, I mean, there are, you can access this information. If you can't physically go, you can still see what's happening in your community,
Okay.
and stay in touch with things, and have your, finger on the pulse of what is happening in your community, and be able to respond to it if you do see something that you don't agree with. So,
Okay.
yeah. Or something you do agree with, that you feel needs more support or more input. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I think that's really, really important. Um, I can't stress that enough, to get involved locally.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Because I'm sure it probably doesn't take too much time
mm-hmm.
out of your.
No,
I don't even know how often, so I'm gonna say sorry. I'm not involved in it either.
it's okay.
I wouldn't even know where to go.
Yeah.
Well, I know where Derby City Hall is, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, more
um,
than likely, that is where your council meetings are held, is the
right.
city hall. So, yeah, start there.
I might go to one
There you
and
go.
then message you back, and just to
Okay.
let you know what my city is.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and I know I was mentioning Wichita earlier. I mean, I'm not part of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
You're
we are.
Derby.
We're
Yeah.
we're
You're
all.
still in, it still
Yeah,
affects you,
it does.
And I know a lot of times people will say, well, why are you posting? Like I'll post in different groups around the area and they'll say, why are you posting about Wichita in our Derby group? And I'm like,
Wichita
you're like
affects us.
connected. Like
Yeah, yeah.
Hayesville, Derby, Goddard, Andover, Bel Air,
Maze, even
Mays.
Andover, and it's in a different
Right.
county, but it
Yeah,
still
but it's
affects it.
still
Yeah,
affected by what Wichita does. And
yeah.
so you need to know what's available
Mm-hmm.
in your, it's considered part of the Wichita metro area when you look at in fact, I believe if I remember correctly, they consider Newton to be part of the Wichita metro area because it's close enough.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly Valley Center and Park City and maybe even Sedgwick. I remember when I was growing up, I was told the whole time we were growing up that eventually Newton and Wichita would be connected.
Getting
It's getting close.
it don't take very
It doesn't
much.
take very much. But I thought, wow, that's going to be crazy. But now it really isn't that far off,
Right.
And so, what they consider to be, I'd have to go look exactly. I think in some circles they consider as far away as Newton as metro area, but in others they probably wouldn't. But for sure, Park City, Valley Center, Mays, Andover, Goddard, maybe even Garden Plain would be considered that metro area, and then everything down south as well. So
it's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it takes much more to get to Kingman anymore.
No, yeah.
Go heading that
Exactly.
way. Like everything's grown that way so far too.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we really are all in this together when we think about, just because you live in Derby, and quite frankly, things that happen in Derby can affect it in Wichita. And maybe not to the same degree. I think that when you are in a suburb of Wichita or a larger city in general, you're going to feel the effects of what that larger city's doing, obviously a little bit more in those smaller communities. But those smaller communities can still have an effect on the larger area as well. And we shouldn't be discounting any area as far as what they're doing and what decisions they're making. We need to be aware of all the different councils and counties, people that are making decisions for our communities. And having said that, the Sedgwick County Commission covers the entire county, and they're making decisions for all of us across the county. I know every one of the commissioners, and they're good people. I think they're working really hard for our county, but it does connect us in that way, and we need to remember that. So, and be aware of that.
I would be curious to follow up on like maybe something that's coming down the line, and that they're going to have a council meeting on. Maybe something that would cause a little bit of a stir, and then go to the council meeting, and then see how many comments, how deep the comments are on a local news channel's Facebook post. Because you see that runs deep.
Yeah.
They sure love to hate on it or whatever, or get in there and argue about it.
Well, and a common thing.
I'm guilty too, though.
I know a common thing's been said that if you didn't vote, you really don't have a voice. You really shouldn't be voicing that opinion because you didn't participate in that vote to begin with. So, and I do agree with that. I agree with if you didn't take the time to get out and make your voice be heard on who you wanted in that position, you can't be upset when they make decisions that you don't agree with, because you did have that opportunity to get out and make that to voice that opinion. Now, whether it went your way or not is irrelevant. The point is that you voiced your opinion. And we have too many that are sitting out and not voicing their opinion anymore. And then they're mad. They're mad because things aren't going their way. And I'm like, yeah, but you really can't be mad about that.
Yeah.
You really can't, because you didn't voice your opinion.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I talk about is every voice matters. Your voice matters. And in my campaign, I am a Republican. But when I'm governor, I won't just be a governor for Republicans. I'll be a governor for Democrats and independents and libertarians and people that just don't even identify with any party whatsoever and go never set foot in a voting booth.
Hmm.
It'll be for all 2.9 million people in this state.
Hmm.
And but your voice matters. And so if I haven't heard it of what your pain point is or what your opinion is, then I can't make a decision
Hmm.
based off of something I've never heard.
Right. Yeah.
So
So,
yeah.
like, okay, yeah. So you end up, you do take on a lot,
Mhm.
and like you said, even though you're a Republican, you're for the whole state,
Mhm.
and you are.
Yeah.
We got to win together,
Yep.
right?
Doesn't mean we're going to agree on
Right.
everything.
And
It's
I think some of the issues that people love to fight about are like things that shouldn't be.
Mhm.
That's my opinion, though, and it's
Yeah.
like I was trying to look up last night or the night before because knew you were coming
Mhm.
over. What's Kansas' biggest issues? And I
Mhm.
came across the ACLU, Kansas
Oh.
ACLU site, and the number one was voter ID.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's like, why is this an issue?
Well, it is an
What
issue. I would
I
agree with it
So I
that
agree with that it is an issue,
mhm.
and
Mhm. Right.
I'm assuming you and me are going to
Mhm.
agree on why it's an issue,
Yeah. Yeah. I
but I
I
don't see why it should be a problem.
right, asking for an ID. Yeah, it should not
Yes.
be a, a problem.
Mhm.
But yeah, it actually is an issue in this state where there's a lot of people that are concerned about election integrity, whether we're actually getting the correct results. Whether we are or not, we can set that aside. What I do know in talking to experts in this is that that machine that we use to vote on can fail 15 different ways.
Oh, wow.
And the only people that understand the program and can identify whether it is functioning correctly or not are the IT people that put it together.
Mhm.
So we're leaving one company to tell us whether it's properly running.
Mhm.
And I have an issue with that. I think that there are easier ways, even with a machine. I mean, it should be a simple, here's the vote, record the vote.
Mhm.
It's a much easier process than 15 different ways to fail.
Exactly.
Um, and so, I do think that needs to be addressed, whether there's actual election integrity issues or not, whether we're getting a fair vote or not. A piece of machinery that we can't verify in except for by the IT professionals who tell us it's working okay,
Mhm.
that we have no other way to verify that is troubling. It's
Mhm.
troubling to me. And so in addition, you know, yes, requesting an ID when you go to vote. Now there's a couple issues with that already, because when you go to let's say the DMV and you go or to
Yeah.
go get your driver's license or whatever, and they ask you if you want to register to vote, and you say, yeah, I'll register to vote. You do not have to prove that you are a citizen to register to vote. Okay.
Mhm.
And you can be issued an ID in this state without being a citizen. And if the requirement is you have an ID when you go to vote and you're registered, now what is the process for verifying that you are eligible to vote? And so there's a couple other layers in there of
The need
election integrity that need to be looked at.
the
Yeah.
need fixed also. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I didn't really
it's
think about that. That's a good point.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they say, oh, well, they weed those out. Well, I hope they do. And I think in Sedgwick County, I do believe there's enough people watching
Uh-huh.
that I do believe that is true.
Yeah.
And I can't vouch for other counties or anything, but I do know that there are people that go down to the election office and watch that recount vote and the verify vote, verifying the election. They watch that to make sure that it is done correctly. And so I'm fairly confident with Sedgwick County, but there's always room for error. That's why it needs to be looked at. There are a couple election integrity issues of the way that they verify that vote that I think that could leave a door open for some problems, but it's the system that we have at this moment. A lot of people like to see paper ballots
Mm-hmm.
come back. Personally, when I was growing up, and again, this is going to date me a little bit, way before I was eligible to vote, I remember elections where we would go in and vote,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have, and it was on paper, and we would have the results that night.
Uh-huh.
And, this last election, we're sitting looking at Nevada, who can't verify their vote for like 2 weeks after the election. And it's like,
I thought that was a bunch of crap.
why?
Yeah.
And so if the electronic voting was supposed to speed things up, make it more accurate, be a better way than the paper ballots, but yet it takes us longer in a
Uh-huh.
lot of cases to even get the results, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think that there are some different things that we could look at. I'm not advocating for one way or another at this point, but and that's more for what the Secretary of State would do. But,
Mm-hmm.
Whoever wins that spot, I would be having some conversations with them
Okay. About
about.
the
Yeah.
election
Yeah.
integrity
Yeah,
and everything.
absolutely. Because that
Okay.
is a big issue for me. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So I believe, you mind if I pull that up real quick?
No,
Because I
you go
did
right ahead.
save it. So, it's, let me see here real quick. Pages. I copied it because I was going to print it off for you too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Voting rights. Okay. Criminal legal reform was number 2. I don't know anything about that. So, I wouldn't,
We're talking about
um,
the ACLU.
yeah, this was
Yeah.
from the ACLU's website. So,
A lot of this stuff is more of that, based in discrimination where they think everybody's discriminated against. So that's probably the criminal. And now I believe that there needs to be some prison reform. I think that there are some things that need to be handled there, but
yeah,
it's not because we're discriminating necessarily against people. So I
I don't think so either.
no.
Yeah, I
If
agree
you're a
with that.
criminal, you're a criminal. If you break the law, you should suffer the consequences of that breaking of that law.
Right. And that might go back to maybe people getting more involved on who they elect for
Absolutely. Yeah.
judges.
Yeah.
People have a say in that.
Well,
So,
actually, let's talk about that because that
but
brings up another issue.
I'm not saying their integrity
So,
is bad, but if you
no,
think something wrong, you can change it.
we
It's
don't
certain.
get a lot of information on our judges to
Mm-hmm.
make those decisions. And so, I had a judge or an attorney that was running for a judge knock on my door. He
Mm-hmm.
was the only one that knocked on my door. And that's not something you normally see. We don't get enough information about those judges to begin with to make accurate decisions. But what I'm going to talk to you about is the vote that's coming up in our primary to change our constitution for our how we elect or how we bring on our Supreme Court.
Okay.
Okay, in Kansas. So, are you familiar with how we currently have our Supreme Court set up?
I thought the governor picked.
No.
No? Okay.
So, the way that it's set up, and I'll bring the history in on this. So, back in the 50s, we had a governor, I believe his name was Hall, and he was not a very popular governor. He was lieutenant governor first. He was kind of like the outsider of his party. He was actually pretty liberal in the Republican Party. And he was serving his first term as governor. He realized he was not going to make it a second term. And if you Google the triple play, the Kansas triple play, you'll see the whole history of this. This is what it was called.
Okay.
And so there was a Supreme Court justice that was going to be stepping down and retiring. So Hall stepped down from his position as governor, moved his lieutenant governor into the governor's position, and then had that lieutenant governor appoint Hall to the Supreme Court. And that is the triple play. Okay.
Okay.
So everybody lost their minds. And what occurred after that was a constitutional amendment to change how we picked our Supreme Court. Now, prior to me running, I had set up my page and I was kind of just out there asking people questions like, what do you think's wrong with Kansas? Type things.
Yeah.
And I asked, do you realize that we have no say in who our Supreme Court is and that no elected official has the say? Okay. And I mean, people were like, yes, we do. We vote on them. No, you do not.
Not the Supreme Court.
You vote on retention
Oh,
only.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, but we don't really have any say, and neither does any elected official, not even our governor. And I'll explain that. So what occurs is the Bar Association selects a committee. So we're talking about our lawyers, of the state in the Bar Association, select a committee who then selects people that should be candidates or their selection for the Supreme Court. And then they get so many picks, and then they present the governor with picks. And that's who she chooses from.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but there's like a specific number here and there and all the stuff. But it's decided basically by the committee. And so if the governor says no to those picks, well, then they just present her with more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I do believe that at some point, if she refuses to pick or he refuses to pick from those, then they choose for her.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, there's no elected official really involved in the process of selecting our Supreme Court.
Okay.
It was a knee-jerk reaction to a one-time occurrence of something that could have been legislated instead of a constitutional amendment.
You're right.
So we did try once before to change this, and it was voted down because education was not there as to why it needs to be changed, because clearly people still thought they were voting them in.
Mm-hmm.
The vote that it's going to go to is a constitutional amendment for the people to vote in their Supreme Court. Not even our federal way, which is where the elected officials vet the candidates, okay, which is what I would prefer.
Mm-hmm.
But they did a poll, apparently, and 75% of the people said that they wanted to be the ones that voted in these Supreme Court justices. That sounds great in theory, except we barely get enough information about our district and local judges. How can we be trusted as a population to vote in our Supreme Court justices that we will probably receive even less information about, that are going to be they should be interpreting the law for the entire state?
Correct.
So I do have some concerns over that. However, I will support that vote because I do recognize that we need to get it changed at least to that degree.
Okay.
And then we need to focus on, well, how do we educate the population about the candidates that want to become our Supreme Court justices, and work it from that perspective. So, yeah, but that will come up for the vote in our primary election in August of 2026. So the same time that the primary for governor takes place. So very important election to be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All of them are really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to dig into that more.
Yeah. I do a
not even
video
gonna
on
say
it.
anything.
Nope, I do a video on it, and you can
Okay.
watch that video and I explain it a little bit more.
Is that on your YouTube?
On my
Or,
YouTube or on my page, yeah.
Oh, okay.
On my Facebook page.
I'll link those too,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Another big thing, I believe, and you're from a county that has a lot of teachers,
Mm-hmm.
the school
Mm-hmm.
system.
Mm-hmm. It's
I-
broken.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'm not saying the teachers.
Nope.
Love the teachers.
Yep.
They do a great job. It's above them.
Yes, absolutely. So, a lot of times what the Teachers Association and the Board of Education would have you believe is that if you are for education reform, you are against teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's simply not true. I have lots of friends that are teachers. And the fact is that we are operating in a very broken system where between K-12 and then higher education, we're supporting that with over 60% of our entire state budget, and it's failing.
Mm-hmm.
On the K-12 level, we are graduating kids that are illiterate and unable to do math at a grade level. We are setting those kids up for lifetime failure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ones that actually make it through and go to college, we are then saddling those kids with decades of debt for taking classes that mean nothing to their degree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And recently, just the other day, I posted this and my thoughts on this. The Board of Regents, who are the ones that make decisions about the colleges, they increased the pay for the CEOs of the colleges above what the legislature approved. Okay.
Yeah.
There is, and I don't know which school this is. I forgot to look at that, but there is at least one head of a school, one of the colleges that's making over $1 million a year. Now, they also just raised tuition throughout the state, and in a lot of cases, and they did this knowing that they have lower enrollment. They're losing some funding. There's extra expenses now for sports. And so they are basically going to saddle the students with even more debt while giving the CEOs a raise.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have a problem with that. And they go, oh, their job is hard. Okay.
The
Is it $1 million hard?
Yeah.
Could it be less? You don't. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know what I'm saying? So they're giving those the CEOs of the colleges those raises.
Okay.
Yeah. So now when we're talking about K-12, we're obviously it's broken. We have children that are not reading at grade level. They're not doing math at grade level. And one of the things that we've done is we've taught to tests.
Yeah.
And we've lost things that are life skills, that are, we've pushed kids forwards. One of my children was one of those that was pushed forward, and without regard of whether he was ready. And so I have a lot of issues with No Child Left Behind because of that, because that's kind of in that we're going to push them forward. No kid fails. Well, sometimes they need to, so they can learn what they need to learn. And if they haven't learned it yet, it's okay. They need to learn it. And so we need to fix curriculum. We need to fix why we are having those failure rates. And the teachers say, well, the parents are not engaging. I agree. The parents need to be more engaged in their child's education as well. This is not a one-stop fix, and but one of my plans is to it's my day one executive order, and I haven't found a good name for this, but basically doing a significant deep audit into every department in our state, looking for misuse of funds, wasteful spending, out and out fraud, and really laying that open for the public to see, being transparent with what has been going on in our state, and especially in education. I guarantee you there are places that we can shore up and make more valuable without taking away. And do we really need to be making millionaires out of our superintendents?
Mhm.
And that is also occurring through their retirement process.
Right.
So, and some superintendents make more than the governor.
Yeah.
You know, some make, and I'm not saying the governor should be paid a ton, but I'm just saying we're talking about a huge income,
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and our kids can't read and do math, and we have leaking buildings and non-working heating and air systems, and just obscene failure rates.
Mhm.
So if our system was working well and we were having good outcomes with our students, where the students were flourishing, they were actually leaving high school at grade level, they were doing all the things, they were being successful, I would not bat a single eyelash at 60% of our entire state budget going to education.
Mhm.
What I have a problem with is that 40% of that budget is going to administration and
Mhm.
to that superintendent and level. And so that's where we need to start
Okay.
is from the top down, not from the bottom up. Our teachers, that money is not reaching our teachers, much less our
No.
students.
Yeah.
So it's not the teachers and the students that are doing the wrong thing. It is elsewhere that we need to be looking at. And where can we make things more valuable without, where can we save money without taking value away? And
Mhm.
hopefully, where are we going to add value to the programs that we have? Because it's not enough to just not take away value because they're already not that valuable in the state they're in currently.
Right.
They're failing. So education is a big deal. Now, I've been a public school, private school, homeschool parent. So
Mhm.
I've run the gamut on all the ways you can educate a child in the state, including tutoring and therapies, because I have two of my children that are, they have learning challenges. So I have one that has autism, and I have one that is profoundly dyslexic and profoundly dysgraphic. So lots of trouble reading and writing. And they had to learn in vastly different ways. And being able to educate them in the way that made sense for them was very, very important. And it didn't look the same on a daily basis how I was educating one child from the other. And so I think that's very important to recognize that my children would not have flourished in the public school system. My two youngest, my oldest went all the way through the public school system, and he's now a CPA and he's doing great. But he was okay in that environment. And I think he was probably one of the last years that education still made sense.
Mhm.
Um, and then, oh,
No, you're good.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
He was one of the last years that education, probably made sense.
Okay.
And then as my other two got into that public school system, um, it was very clear that they were not going to thrive in that environment and something else needed to be done for them. And thankfully, we were able to do that. But a lot of families are kind of stuck in that environment of what do we do? We've got to work, so we can't homeschool. We don't have enough money for private school. Sometimes not enough money for therapies. Not all of their therapies were covered by insurance. And we did an entire year of nothing but tutoring that was about $800 a week for a few hours of tutoring a week. And so those options aren't always available to families. And I think that needs to change as well. So I am I don't like calling it school choice. We already have school choice where you can send your child wherever you can as long as you can get them there, right?
Mhm.
What I think it needs to be called parents' choice,
Yeah.
where you are looking at the individual student and educating them in the way that they need to be educated. My youngest is a good example of that. He started out in the public school system. I took him out at the end of his kindergarten year because he went from the top of his class to the bottom of his class in kindergarten. and homeschooled him from first grade to eighth grade. And then in eighth grade, through seventh grade, in eighth grade, we did all tutors for a year. And then we found a private Christian school that would work with him and his dyslexia and dysgraphia. And the school was Elyria Christian School up near McPherson. And they actually had a school in a school. So they would take him out of his classes for reading and math and put him into this one-on-one education. And then he would resume his other classes
Okay.
with the rest of his class. And so he actually is a diesel mechanic today with an associate's degree. And I don't believe that would have been possible had he been in the public school system.
Okay.
So, yeah. So each child is different. Now, my middle son, the one with autism, once I took him out at the end of second grade, I had to take him all the way back to first grade and reteach everything. He'd already been held back a year in pre-K. So he was a year older than everybody in class. I had to take him back, and I graduated him on time. And so and he went homeschool from that point. And that is a testament to one-on-one, education and like I said, educating to the child. And not every child is made to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And mine were prime examples of that. They needed to get up and move around and do other things and learn in a different way. So sometimes our learning was sitting at the zoo counting flamingos or learning about why flamingos are pink, or whatever. So, education doesn't always take place at a desk. And so we have to be aware of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And when you say, because I think people hear this and they take it the wrong way, that say, when you just said that if he had been in the public school system, this is not anti-teacher talk at all.
No.
It is not. We
It's learning
realize
style.
your hands are tied behind your back. Like, the teachers need so much more support,
Yeah, absolutely. And they're leaving in droves. They're leaving the public school system for sure in droves, and a lot of them are going to private institutions instead. It's a different environment, and that's a shame. I mean, we do need those public. There is a need for public school. I'm not advocating for getting rid of public school by any means, but what is occurring right now, when I graduated my middle son with autism, he was reading at over a 12th grade level. He was doing pre-algebra. And to me, I mean, this is a high functioning autistic person, but still somebody that struggles with a lot of day-to-day normal activities because of his disability. But that was the difference. He was being passed over and passed on in public school, and I don't think he would have progressed as far. It just wasn't the correct environment for him. And it wasn't because teachers didn't care. Really, I believe it comes down to the administration who said, nope, push him forward. It doesn't have to do with the teachers. I think there are teachers out there that are just dying inside for their students and want to see them successful. And you're right, their hands are tied. So I'm definitely not anti-teacher or anti-public school or anything like that, but we need to get it figured out and get it functioning the right way so that we have successful outcomes. But in that, it needs to include the fact that maybe there's children that don't belong in that public school setting, that they need to be educated a different way for them to be successful.
Okay.
So, and that also, something like school choice creates competition. It actually spurs schools to do a better job because they want to retain those students, right? They don't want to lose those students. This year, and I don't have a lot of facts on this, but this year I was told that 259 created a micro school in response to, and there's only like 12 students in it, and I don't know what the focus was, but it was in response to school choice, meaning people were leaving, and people have left 259 in tremendous numbers, and they'll go to outlying public
Mm-hmm.
school. They'll go to Goddard, or they'll go to Andale, or Mays and Andover, any of those schools over Wichita because they can.
Mm-hmm.
And Wichita, their response to that was to create this micro school, and hopefully they will continue to create some of those environments that are focused on different learning styles and focused on different types of education. If you have a student that is more for the arts and for music, and well, let their focus be, there's a lot of learning that can be done through music. I was very involved in music. There can be ways to use that with math, with English, with
Mm-hmm.
with science. Let's make it that their focus and let them thrive where they thrive. um so I mean, there's ways to do things like that and help students be successful. So,
Absolutely.
because when at the end of the day, what it comes down to is student success. And God bless the teachers. I love the teachers. That's their job. But at the end of the day, it's not about the teacher's success. It's about the student's success.
And they went into it for
Right.
the student's success.
That's correct. That's correct.
It wasn't salary
No.
for
And
that needs to,
yeah. And
we can, yeah.
well, and our students are our future,
Mhm.
and they are the ones that are going to be, and we have several failed generations that we're looking at right now that we just utterly have failed them. And, we've got a few generations of TikTok brain people that think they're going to be superstars because of
Mhm.
TikTok, instead of focusing on their studies and their education and what they're going to do for a job. And we've really created a problem with that. And so I applaud the schools that are taking cell phones out. Now, my son needed his cell phone because that's what he actually used to dictate his lessons into, instead of having to write.
Mhm.
But those are far and few between,
Mhm.
students that exceptions could be made for. So,
Obviously, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's not saying it's like a zero tolerance
Right.
or anything.
And at the same time, students still need to be learning about technology because that is the world we live in.
It is.
We need to know how to use technology. So it's not a removal of all technology from everything education, but appropriate use of that technology in school, in that environment, needs to be
Mhm.
monitored. So
I guess my question on it would be an idea would be, would you as governor be able to maybe create some protection for teachers to be able to speak up more against administration, like for their opinions to and what they're the ones there, right? So they need to have some say on. I hear it all the time,
mhm.
right? And I'm sure you have too, from teachers that they got all the ideas
It's
and it's
sitting at
going
the
nowhere.
union level and the board of education. So, which is not something that, um, while I believe that the governor should have a say over, the legislation has very little say over. And so
Hmm.
there needs to be some work done on that level. So to
I don't
make
know
it,
the answer.
yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of great ideas out there, and I know some great people that are elected officials at the state level that are trying to make those good changes. Um, but it's going to come down to, are we getting good servant leadership into those positions, or are we not?
mhm.
Are we just letting whatever happens because we're not using our voice?
Yeah. or do you have any other things you need to get out there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of issues in this state that, yeah, there's a lot of issues in this state that need to be addressed, and there's, um, just when we're talking about, I could sit here all day and talk about so many different issues that we're just not going to get to. Um, things about eminent domain and land grabs and solar energy and wind energy and just getting into some really deep topics, not to mention what our farmers are doing, what their needs are out in Western Kansas, what, I mean, we could go on for days talking
Mhm,
about the issues. What I think is, what I think I'm fighting against for this position the most is big money politics that
mhm,
wants to make those decisions for us, and they're not speaking for us. They're
mhm,
speaking for their own interests. And so, me as a candidate, I'm not a politician. I am a frustrated Kansan. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a mom, and I have a stake in this state and the future, which is my children.
mhm,
And they're just starting their lives. They're young adults. They're just starting their adult lives and getting involved and learning about things. And you know, if there's something that I can do to help secure their future and help secure the future of this state, I want to do it. I'm not
mhm,
here to create a career. I'm not here for any kind of political clout or um, any kind of gain. I'm simply here to serve. And it would be, I say this all the time, it would be so much easier for me not to do this.
mhm,
Okay. It would be easier for me to stay in my little bubble and work my businesses and do all those things than to be attacked by random strangers on the internet on the daily, which happens. Okay. And,
I don't
and,
believe it.
yeah, and to be putting myself out there for that. But I love this state, and I love the people, and I love people in general, and I want to see good things for this state. And I just see we've let, over the past 20 some years, it's just gotten out of control.
Mhm,
And one of the things that I hope to see is that we get more. I can prove with this election that we don't need big money politics involved, that the people of this state can truly use their voice and make a change. And this is and will be the largest grassroots effort that's probably ever been carried out in the state for
I
this election.
I believe it because,
Yeah.
well, that's what made me
Mm-hmm.
look into your campaign more
Mm-hmm.
because I saw that you were traveling. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you put
Yep.
almost 30,000 miles
Mm-hmm.
on your car
In 7 months. Yep.
in 7 months. So I like that. I
Yep.
like that you're
Yep.
getting out there,
Yep.
talking to people,
And I go where the people are.
and
So
connecting. So
I'll go to bars, I'll go to
there you go. I
libraries
mean,
and
what?
coffee shops. Well, that's where
Yeah,
the real people are. That's
right.
where the real people are. And
That's where the conversations happen
that's
too.
correct. Well, that's where you see frustrated Kansans that have worked
True.
all day, they've worked their tail end off, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel valued. And if you want to have a really good, honest conversation with somebody, you go in right after they've gotten off work and walked in, not
Mhm.
later in the evening. I've been
Yeah,
hanging around too long, but
right.
early in the evening, happy hour, and have a conversation with people that and listen to what is truly their pain point in life. And it's different everywhere I go in the state. So
Okay.
um, I jokingly tell people I'll go to an opening of an envelope as long as there's people there, because
Mhm.
it's not about where I'm showing up. It's about who I'm getting to engage with, and that is the actual residents and citizens, the people that live and work here in this state that are important.
Okay.
It's not our politicians. It's not our officials. It's not our big business. It's our small and medium mom and pop businesses. It's our hardworking people everywhere, from whether you work in retail or McDonald's to an office to, whatever, trucking, whatever your business is, our farmers. You're important
Mm-hmm.
and you do matter. And that matters to me.
Okay.
And so a couple fun facts, you can throw these in wherever you want. But when I become governor, I would be the first female Republican in the state's history.
Mm-hmm.
I will be the youngest female ever to hold that position. I am the youngest person running as well. And those are just little tidbits. They're not a reason to vote for me, but they're interesting facts, and I always like interesting facts. So
Yeah.
there was a younger male that held the position of governor than me, and but yeah, it's kind of fun. So to know that, and people like to root for. Sometimes people like to root for the underdog. They like to root for the
Yeah.
person that really wants something better for them. And so that's what as I'm traveling, that's what I'm seeing throughout the state is a lot of support. People are fed up. They are sick and tired of what's been happening, and they want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I just keep telling them it's going to take all of us working together. This is not a me thing. This is an us thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've managed to do things that they didn't say was possible, or do things that they said wasn't possible, which is gain statewide name recognition in the party. So inside the Republican Party, I'm well known now, and more times than not, when I go somewhere, like you found me,
Mm-hmm.
I've utilized things like social media, podcasts, and just simply getting in my car and driving to places to get my name out there. And more times than not, someone has heard of me now when I go somewhere in the state.
Nice.
And that's really encouraging. And I've done that in 6 months.
Yeah.
Utilizing those things without utilizing or needing to utilize a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something they say can't happen. So
Right.
I love that, and that's a testament to the people of this state speaking up. So right now, I currently have, about 5,800 people that follow me on Facebook on one page, and it reaches over 400,000 people a month.
Okay.
And my total reach, from what I can gather on all my social media platforms, is somewhere close to 700,000 people a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that is done organically, no paid advertisements. It's just what the people of the state are engaging.
Mm-hmm.
And they're eager. They want someone to lead them that cares about them.
Okay.
And that's what I represent. So
Awesome.
anyways,
Well,
yeah.
it's Stacy Rogers. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for coming over. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Welcome back anytime if,
Awesome.
because there's a lot more issues to
Yeah.
talk about. So
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.